Hollywood panics as Deadpool destroys their agenda with guaranteed sequels. Coming from The Guardian, is this really the end of the line for Deadpool? Disney will never turn off the money trap. As Deadpool and Wolverine crosses $1 billion, the question Disney suits will no doubt be asking themselves is whether there's more Wonga to be made here. Just about everybody expected Ryan Reynolds' debut in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to be a success, but few could have imagined that Sean Levy's film would look set to take over Todd Phillips' Joker as the highest-grossing R-rated film of all time in only the third week of release. All eyes will now turn to what happens next, because the whole point of the MCU is that there is always something coming next. Where once Hollywood was dependent on sequels, prequels, spin-offs, and reboots to keep the gravy train rolling when it finally had a big hit on its hands, it now boasts a seemingly endless saga that acts more like an ever-expanding, constantly evolving fanboy joy virus. And that's what comic book world storytelling is supposed to be about. Endless stories about characters that you can care about that can continue for years and for decades. This is why the screams coming from Disney this week must have been more palpable than the tortured yelps of those destined to spend eternity in Dante's Inferno, when Reynolds was quoted as saying that he had precisely zero plans for a follow-up. Describing Deadpool and Wolverine as a movie made as a complete experience, Reynolds told Collider, quote, "It wasn't meant to be a commercial for another movie. It wasn't meant to be any of that stuff. And I think I get a great deal of joy making a movie like that. But honestly, right in this moment, I have no idea if I'll ever wear that Deadpool suit again. I hope I do, but I don't know. Right now's the time to just kind of hang it up for a bit and see what happens next." The reality here, of course, is that there's less chance of Marvel diversifying into documentaries about the life cycle of East African hairy aardvark than there is of the studio never making another Deadpool movie starring Reynolds. MCU episodes are always advertisements for the next 10 films. And it's frankly ridiculous to pretend that a Canadian actor wasn't fully aware of this when he signed on the dotted line. Of course, it means he just never negotiated to do more than just this. Because why would he? He wouldn't need to. He's going to make a lot of money, even a lot more money in the future. On the other hand, Reynolds has so fulsomely flagged up the image of Deadpool and Wolverine as a monolithic, once-in-a-lifetime event picture that it's hardly surprising he's steering away from the idea of another movie. The chances of Jackman returning seem remote. There are only so many times the Merc with a mouth and his grumpy adamantium-clawed buddy can slash each other to bits while trading kindergarten-level personal insults before everyone starts wondering if maybe Eternals-era Marvel wasn't so terrible after all. That's absolutely never going to happen. And the people that just don't get these fun movies, that just want propaganda movies, don't appreciate the fun movies. Nobody wants to see another Eternals movie. Deadpool and Wolverine has done so well that the studio will be desperate to find a way to involve Reynolds and potentially Jackman in its upcoming Avengers movies, Doomsday and Secret Wars. Levy has spoken in the past about wanting to make a Deadpool and Spider-Man movie, which hints at a way forward for the saga. Yet surely Deadpool wants to become more than the MCU's eternal Metatroll, rolling out a series of encounters with various Marvel straight men until there's nobody left for him to go up against, and they end up sticking him in the void to trade insults with a dozen even more sarcastic alternative reality variapools. The problem perhaps for Deadpool in the MCU is that he doesn't really belong there at all. The more he appears, the less likely it is on a number of levels that anyone is going to take any other Marvel movie that doesn't star Reynolds seriously. The more we see him bounding on the screen in glorious, ultra-violent, super sweaty, larger-than-life IMAX, the grayer, smaller, and more boring everyone around him looks. And yet now that the studio has seen how much audiences love him, it's hard to imagine its filmmakers not doing everything they can to repeat the trick as soon as it's humanly possible. But the reality is this is one of the great things about Marvel Comics when it's done properly. Each of the series do have a different feel to it and a different take to them. They don't all sell as well, and not all the characters are as big as each other. But if you're gonna have a Wolverine, you don't get to enjoy Wolverine as much as you could, or Deadpool as much as you could, if you didn't have some small, quiet characters that could be interesting but are never going to give you the thrill that a Deadpool is going to give you. But if the characters are designed well, they complement each other. And from Variety, why Deadpool and Wolverine is the year's most depressing success story. For all its self-deprecating quippery, The crossover superhero smash represents corporate brand synergy at its most ruthless. With $500 million in the bank within a week of its global release, Deadpool and Wolverine proved reports of the superhero genre's demise greatly exaggerated. There's no more talk going around of toxic fans. There's no more talk going around of superhero fatigue. There were a lot of superheroes in this Deadpool and Wolverine movie. What's the matter? People aren't fatigued about them anymore? No, they're not actually fatigued of that. People are fatigued of people ruining superheroes to push their political agendas. So it's going to be a while before we hear the term superhero fatigue again, or even toxic fan when it comes to at least Marvel. They want these Marvel fans. The studio wants the Marvel fans. They're happy to take their money. And they've been forced back to this phase of making things people actually want to see. Ever since Disney finally decided on a July release date in the wake of the writers and actor strikes, Sean Levy's film has been projected as the one nailed-on smash hit of an otherwise uncertain summer, and a shot in the arm for a Marvel Cinematic Universe that, following the dismal performance of last year's The Marvels, had slightly lost its commercial luster, had completely lost apparently all of the value of the entire Marvel brand. They didn't know if they could bring it back or not. They didn't know if fans would accept Deadpool and Wolverine, or if they would have just said, you know what, enough with Marvel already. They certainly lost a lot of their momentum. If they had kept their momentum and then put out Deadpool and Wolverine, the movie would be even bigger. But with the movie having success and having the obvious guidance of stop trying to educate your audience in your political agenda with propaganda, just make things that will entertain them that's consistent with what people expect when they go to see a Marvel movie. Literally, that's all they had to do. That is what they did. And now they're back in that mode. Unlike some other comic book mashup movies, Deadpool and Wolverine brought together two characters, and in Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, two stars who were already cast iron brand names in their own right. Folded into the MCU from the superhero stable of 20th Century Fox, following Disney's acquisition of the latter, Deadpool and Wolverine are figures at once contrasting and complementary. Wise-ass comic shtick in one corner, sternly brawny machismo in the other, with a disparity between them that is the stuff of age-old buddy movie tradition. Their on-screen pairing thus layers entrenched screenwriting formula atop the most strategic of corporate mergers. It's brand synergy the movie, as diagrammatically calculated a blockbuster as Hollywood has ever made. Yet they did it with a ruined brand. All they have to do is just keep doing the same thing. The success will continue. If that sounds cynical, the filmmakers would hardly object to such a description. Deadpool and Wolverine thoroughly owns its own cynicism, to the point that it's the punchline of the entire movie. Again and again, as in Deadpool's previous two screen outings, the script, the five writers of which include Reynolds himself, breaks the fourth wall to draw the audience's attention and not just to its status as a movie, but as a hand-me-down studio project. But welcome to the MCU. You're joining at a bit of a low point. Deadpool quips to an incarnation of Wolverine pulled from a waning multiverse of options. Earlier, he bemoans Marvel Studios' never-say-die approach to movie franchising. Quote, Marvel is so stupid. How are we going to do this without dishonoring Logan's memory? We're not. That reference to the well-regarded 2017 film that had until now been Wolverine's rather poignant big-screen swan song underlines the very different rules of the new corporate realm into which the character has been resurrected. In Deadpool and Wolverine, nothing is sacred, nothing is finite, and nothing much matters as a result. This cavalier attitude towards storytelling integrity and artistic purpose is a joke, and that joke is connecting in a big way with the film's target audience. For patient Marvel fans who have been stuck with a tangled network of superhero franchises through thick and thin, it perhaps feels validating to hear some admission of error on high. As an agnostic viewer considerably less invested in genre lore, the author should have been laughing too. And yet something in Deadpool and Wolverine's slick self-mockery struck the author as too derisive to be funny. The longer the film simultaneously implicates itself in and accepts itself from the craven opportunism of Disney's sequelitis, the more hollow and joyless an experience it became. There's something self-congratulatory in the film's supposed subversiveness, as it takes the mick out of its corporate overlords, mocking them, with every confidence that it's going to make them a metric ton of cash anyway, with far more emphasis on the metatextual referencing than its threadbare save the world, or at least save the timeline plot. Deadpool and Wolverine admits at every turn to being a tenuous, business-minded Disney cash-in. But if the studio's on board with the satire and it's our money being taken. Who's really the butt of the joke? Marvel isn't so stupid. They know exactly what they're doing here, and Deadpool and Wolverine fulfilled its brief absolutely, if not elegantly, in marrying the glib snark of the first two Deadpool films to the smilier, tidier sentimentality that is the MCU's modus operandi, and leaving an ever more beleaguered-looking Wolverine as its tonal go-between. Ryan Reynolds recently described Deadpool and Wolverine as the first four-quadrant R-rated film, which is an apt encapsulation of its covering all bases ruthlessness. Deadpool and Wolverine's meta upon meta upon meta posturing is hardly unprecedented in contemporary Hollywood, as films like the Lego Movie and last year's Daffy smash hit Barbie have also resorted to intricately self-referential comedy to stand as both independently imaginative art and corporate brand maintenance. But Levy's film might have just staked new territory in its winking acknowledgement of the creative bankruptcy that has shaped its very existence. In a year where the 11 top grossers so far are all sequels or franchise extensions of some variety, the film's blithe candor in that regard makes it nothing if not of the moment. But there's surely only so far this glib irony can take you. How much longer can Marvel sneer at its own legacy before audiences crave stories that don't merit such contempt? Hollywood is capable of making a lot of different kinds of movies. They also have the support of streaming services now. There are many movies being made, many independent films, many new concept films, and many franchise films. There's room for all kinds of art. There's room for all kinds of entertainment. But what you can't do is make things that people don't want to see. I'm not expecting Hollywood to make any great films. What I am expecting them to do, because they have no other choice, is to focus on making things that people actually want to see. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.